America, at the end of the 19th century, the streets of Detroit and Chicago are crowded with wagons and carriages. Horses leave behind tons of manure. The air is filled with noise and dust. Across the city, the first automobiles begin to appear. Expensive, impractical, more like toys for the rich than a means of transportation. But in Michigan, a boy is growing up who will not accept this reality. Since childhood, he has dreamed of a world where every person can afford a car. His name is Henry Ford, and his story is about how one idea can transform the lives of millions. Chapter 1: Childhood and Henry Ford's First Steps. Henry Ford was born in 1863 on a farm in the small town of Dearborn, Michigan. His parents were simple Irish immigrants. The family lived off the land, cattle, fields, and crops. But from an early age, Henry felt he was drawn to something else. Instead of farm work, he was fascinated by mechanisms. He disassembled neighbors' pocket watches, trying to understand how each gear worked. At 12, he was already repairing farm machinery, and at 16, he ran away from home to Detroit to seek his future. There he worked as an apprentice in a workshop and first encountered steam engines, motors, and new technologies. Later, he became an engineer at the Edison Company, but even then, in the evenings, he worked on his own inventions. In 1896, he built his first car, the primitive quadricycle, a wooden frame, 4 bicycle wheels, a gasoline engine. To his neighbor, it looked like a clumsy toy, but for history, it was the beginning of a new era. Henry realized the car could be simple, cheap, and useful. From that moment on, he would never abandon his dream. Chapter 2: Creation of Ford Motor Company. The road to his dream was not easy. Ford's first attempts to start a company ended in failure. The Detroit Automobile Company shut down because its cars were too expensive and unreliable. The Henry Ford Company he lost when investors pushed him out. But Henry Ford was stubborn. In 1903, he found new partners, raised $28,000 in capital, and founded Ford Motor Company. The company's first model, the Ford Model A, was a small, neat car that did not yet cause a revolution. But unlike his competitors, Ford was already thinking not about luxury, but about simplicity and accessibility. He said, "I want to build a car so simple to drive that a farmer, a worker, or even their wives can use it. A car that will take a man to work, to church, or to visit neighbors. A car for everyone." This phrase became the philosophy of the company. Chapter 3: Model T, the car for everyone. 1908, America sees a new automobile, the Ford Model T. This was a car unlike anything built before. A simple design, a lightweight engine, high ground clearance for country roads. The price was only $825, still a lot, but 3 times cheaper than competitors. And most importantly, it could be repaired by the owner himself. Spare parts cost pennies, repairs took minutes. Farmers, workers, school teachers, for the first time, ordinary people began buying cars. For nearly 20 years, the Model T became a legend. From 1908 to 1927, more than 15 million were produced. It became a symbol of freedom. Now a person could decide for themselves where and when to travel. America began to change. If before a trip to a neighboring town took a whole day, now by car it was just a couple of hours. The Model T broke barriers between village and city, between rich and poor. It changed culture and the very fabric of American life. Chapter 4: The Assembly Line Revolution. But the real revolution happened not only on the road, but in the factory. In 1913, in Detroit, at the Highland Park plant, Ford introduced the moving assembly line. The idea was simple. Each worker performed one operation, while the car moved along the line. But the effect was astonishing. If before, assembling a car took 12 hours, now it took only 93 minutes. This allowed costs to plummet. The price of the Model T fell from $825 to $360, and later to $290. The car became truly affordable. At the same time, Ford shocked industrialists with another move. He set a minimum wage of $5 a day. This was twice the rate of other factories. People lined up for the chance to work at Ford. But the most important part, the workers themselves became Ford customers. What they built at the factory, they could drive home. Thus, a new America was born, a nation of workers who became the middle class, a country where the car ceased to be a luxury and became a necessity. Chapter 5. Global Influence and Dark Pages. Ford did not stop at the United States. His factories began to appear all over the world, in Canada, England, Germany, Argentina. Ford cars became an international product. But along with fame came controversy. Henry Ford was known for his anti-Semitic publications in the newspaper The Dearborn Independent. His views sparked outrage and later left a permanent stain on his reputation. During World War II, Ford's American plants produced military equipment for the U.S. Army. But in Europe, some of the company's subsidiaries also supplied trucks to the German Wehrmacht. This dual role still provokes debates among historians. Ford became a symbol of progress, but also an example of how corporations can play an ambiguous role in world politics. Chapter 6. The Post-War Boom. After the war, America entered a golden age. The 1950s and 60s were a time of growth, optimism, and rock and roll. People wanted new cars, fast, stylish, symbols of freedom. Ford responded with legends. The Thunderbird, a car that combines style and comfort. And in 1964 came the Mustang, an affordable sports car that became a true symbol of a generation. It embodied the spirit of youth, the road, and freedom. Students, musicians, young families bought it. The Mustang appeared in films, in songs, in culture. At the same time, the Ford F-Series pickups established themselves as America's workhorse. These trucks became the embodiment of practicality and strength.
Chapter 7. The Battle at Le Mans. But the loudest chapter was the sporting war with Ferrari. In the 1960s, Henry Ford II wanted to buy Ferrari to gain prestige in Europe. The deal was nearly complete, but Enzo Ferrari backed out at the last moment. Insulted, Ford vowed revenge. He poured millions into the GT40 project. Teams of engineers worked nights, perfecting every detail. In 1966, at the legendary 24 Hours of Le Mans, the GT40 crushed Ferrari, taking the top 3 places. This was more than a victory. It was America's triumph over Europe. The GT40 won 3 more years in a row, and the name Ford was forever etched into motorsport history.
Chapter 8. The Crises of the 1970s and 1980s. But success was not eternal. In 1973 and 1979, the world was rocked by oil crises. Gasoline prices soared, and America's giant cars became uneconomic. Japanese Toyota and Honda entered the market, compact, reliable, fuel-efficient. Ford was in trouble. Some models, like the Pinto, became symbols of failure and even danger. But there were successes too. Escort, and Fiesta, which helped the company survive. These years were a time of struggle for Ford. The company learned to adapt to new realities where raw engine power no longer guaranteed success. Chapter 9: Globalization and the 2008 Crisis. In the 1990s and 2000s, Ford tried to become a global giant. He bought Aston Martin, Jaguar, Volvo, and a stake in Mazda. But expansion proved too costly. By the early 2000s, Ford was losing billions. Then came the 2008 global financial crisis. The U.S. auto industry collapsed. GM and Chrysler asked for government bailouts. But Ford, the only one of the big three, survived without federal aid. This became a point of pride. The company restructured, focused on its strongest models, and proved it could endure independently. Chapter 10: The Electric Future. Today, Ford once again stands at the threshold of a new era. The world is moving from gasoline to electricity, and Ford is not falling behind. The Mustang Mach-E, the company's first electric crossover. The F-150 Lightning, the electric version of America's most popular pickup. Ford is investing billions into self-driving technologies, digital services, and sustainability. Yet it remains true to Henry Ford's philosophy: the car must be accessible to the people. If in the early 20th century, Ford gave the world the mass-produced car, now it promises a mass future,